London River from Tilbury, past the familiar Thames barges, the 14,000-ton Empire Hallidale is seen taking some 550 BAOR wives and children. What a thrilling moment for them after their long wait for this opportunity to rejoin husbands and fathers. Now that they were on the way, they found themselves traveling in considerable comfort, as voyaging goes these days, and thoughtful provision had been made for the children. Some of these would be seeing their fathers for the first time. Some wives hadn't seen their husbands for 5 or 6 years. For all of them, it was very much an adventure into the unknown. And as they reached Cuxhaven, the port of disembarkation, they must have been excited at the prospect. Obviously, they were wondering what it would be like to live in a shattered Germany, surrounded by ex-enemies, and to play their particular part in the occupation of the British zone. At least one lucky family was reunited at Cuxhaven itself. Most of them, of course, had much of their journeys still to come. Field Marshal Lord Montgomery naturally received a very warm welcome from Canadians all the way from Halifax and Montreal to Ottawa. Here in Ottawa, his scene was the Parade of War Veterans, which was one of the highlights of his visit to the capital. Thousands had turned out to witness the inspection, and the streets were full of cheering people as he drove to the War Memorial. The Field Marshal laid a wreath in tribute to the memory of Canada's fallen, men who gave their lives on many fronts throughout the long and bitter struggle of 2 world wars. Before his visit to Ottawa, he had stopped in Montreal, where, after receiving an honorary degree of Doctor of Laws at McGill University, he delivered an address which included these typical phrases.
I regret to say that Britain entered the late war wholly unprepared. Wholly. We had few ships, few soldiers, we had few weapons with which to arm our soldiers, and we had few airplanes. Why did we win through? Why was it? I think we won through because the men and women of Britain and the British Commonwealth of Nations were prepared to stand firm in the cause of liberty, and if necessary to give their lives, that others might have freedom.
Alan Patterson, the 18-year-old Scot, jumping at the University of London Athletic Ground, Motspur Park, failed to get higher than 6'2". It was, in fact, a day of mishaps. In the 100-yard sprint, Zoe MacDonald-Bailey went splashing past the field to win a heat in 9.8, and has 5 times this season equalled the British record of 9.7, he pulled a muscle and couldn't compete in the final. Then, in the 440 yards record attempt by the other West Indian, Wint, misfortune interfered again. Wint made a great start and looked all set for a record. But after about 100 yards, he went lame, a pulled muscle reducing his magnificent stride to this. Perhaps the cold weather, coupled with the strain of many athletic meetings, was the cause. Anyway, Wint fell headlong on the track, and his record had to wait. As if all this were not enough, Sidney Wooderson was for it too. He was out to lower the British 2-mile record. Though he went right out in front and was about 100 yards ahead in the 5th lap, he suddenly started running with a limp. The Wooderson rhythm and fluency were gone. It was the return of trouble from the Achilles tendon which had almost stopped him competing in the 5,000 meters at Oslo. Bad luck indeed. He carried on and won easily in 9 minutes 12.8, being 12.2 seconds outside the record, which he would otherwise probably have beaten. As Wooderson himself said afterwards, it was just one of those things.
great French battleship Richelieu went out to meet the aircraft carrier Colossus, which the Royal Navy is lending to France for 5 years. On sighting the former British man-of-war, French pilots radioed back to the battleship and the rendezvous was soon brought about. The captain of Richelieu, with whom was Monsieur Michelet, the armaments minister, fired a salute of welcome. Colossus, 17,000-ton light carrier designed to house 42 fighter planes, had been manned by a French crew at Portsmouth. Monsieur Michelet went aboard when she at last anchored off Cherbourg under the flag for the next 5 years of the French Republic. At Dagenham on the Thames estuary, it was a historic day in British motoring. The English branch of the Ford Company produced its millionth car. The Minister of Supply, Mr. Wilmot, congratulated Lord Perry, the chairman, on behalf of the government, as most of the car output is feeding Britain's export drive, which buys the food to feed Britain herself. Even the millionth car was scheduled to leave the country almost as soon as it came off the production lines. Roll on the day when motor car output rises still higher, prices fall, and there will be a goodly surplus which we shan't have to ship overseas. The wettest and windiest August for 32 years has had a bad effect on what promised to be a good harvest. At a time when we want every ounce of food we can grow, the bad summer is a heavy blow to the nation's larder. Faced with a shortage of manpower, farmers had the services of thousands of prisoners of war, and in the intervals of fine weather, it was expected that the work would go well. In addition, there were the armies of voluntary helpers, whom the district officers of the county agricultural committees allotted to the farms. Then came the appalling storms, flattening the corn, and in many parts of the country, making it impossible to cut it by machinery. That meant a good deal more hard work than the volunteers bargained for, but they went at it with a will. Resourceful farmers used grass cutters to tackle the damaged barley. Even then, the stooks have had a thorough soaking, and it's expected that when the full harvest is gathered in, it'll be a long way behind the expectations of early summer. However, it isn't all a tale of woe. There have been parts of the country unvisited by the storms where the crops are good. Farmers hope that the worst is over, and that a better yield than now seems likely will be obtained from the good earth.
Athens, the sorely tried capital of Greece, weathers the plebiscite elections in a surprisingly orderly manner. Banners, slogans, and orators worked the electors up to a high pitch of excitement, but no untoward incidents marred the conduct of the poll. In striking contrast to the scenes of bloodshed which marked the armed political action of 2 years ago, the streets of the capital presented an almost carnival atmosphere as the nation made its decision in the manner of a true democracy by majority vote. The choice lay between a future as a republic or as a monarchy. But to the 70% of Greeks who voted for the return of King George, the issue was an even simpler one, based on the interpretation of a word dear to Greek hearts, freedom. So an exiled king is recalled, not as a leader of a party, but as a leader of a gallant nation seeking peace to heal her wounds.